Have you ever been there, so deep into studying that you start using quantum mechanics to justify not taking an exam? Well, that's exactly where we find our student Ken. We're going to dive into what happens to our brains under that kind of pressure, and how, sometimes, the weirdest ways we procrastinate can actually lead to something pretty amazing.
So, to really get into this, we're going to follow a short story we're calling The Quantum Canine of ODTÜ. It's about a group of students at Turkey's Middle East Technical University, or ODTÜ. We'll follow them through a late-night study session to see how a little mystery accidentally turned into the best study guide they could have asked for.
All right, so here's our setting. The METU physics department late at night during midterm season. A place like this becomes a kind of pressure cooker. It's the perfect place to see how we all cope when the stress is dialed up to 11. This building isn't just a backdrop, it's where the whole story unfolds. Okay, let's break down what's happening in this study room because it's a perfect snapshot of 3 different ways people deal with intense pressure. You got Osley, who's just laser focused. Then there's Aaron, who has totally hit a wall. That's cognitive burnout. And then you have Khan, who's doing what I like to call creative avoidance. These aren't just quirks, they're basically archetypes of how we handle stress. You know, when Aaron says his brain is going to collapse into a singularity, he's not just being dramatic. That's actually a pretty great way to describe a real psychological state called cognitive overload. It's when your brain literally cannot process any more information. It's a sign that a break isn't just a good idea, it's absolutely necessary for you to actually learn anything. And here's the interesting thing about them just stepping outside. It's more than just getting some fresh air. Psychologists call this a cognitive reset. By literally changing your environment, you give the part of your brain that does all the heavy lifting, the prefrontal cortex, a chance to reboot. It's a super effective way to get back on track. And then this happens, an outside distraction. The dog, Physic, starts acting weird, and just like that, it completely hijacks their attention. This is a great example of how our brains, especially when they're tired, are suckers for anything new or unexpected. It breaks that cycle of stress and exhaustion.
So, this moment right here, when they find this glowing symbol, this is where everything changes in their brains. They go from being swamped with the stress hormone cortisol to getting a jolt of dopamine. That's the chemical that's all about curiosity and reward. It's literally why being curious feels so good and why it's such a powerful tool for learning.
And what happens next is just classic. You see 2 totally different ways of thinking pop up immediately. Can jumps straight to these wild theories. That's called divergent thinking, just throwing creative ideas out there. Oslo, on the other hand, is trying to find the most logical explanation. That's convergent thinking. You really need both to solve any tough problem. This is such a great shot because it shows you something that they have no idea about. They are so zoomed in on this little puzzle right in front of them that they're completely missing this huge piece of the picture in the background. It's a perfect reminder that our view of any situation is always incomplete. Think about this for a second. A few minutes ago, they were motivated by this external pressure, passing their exam. Now, they're driven by something totally internal, pure curiosity. And look at their energy. It's shot through the roof. This just goes to show you, when you can tap into that natural curiosity, it's way more powerful than just forcing yourself to do something.
You know how a familiar place can suddenly feel completely different? That's what's happening here. This hallway was totally normal a few hours ago, but now that their curiosity is fired up, their brains are on high alert, so a simple flickering light suddenly seems super significant, maybe even a little spooky.
Okay, this is it. This is the moment a random thing becomes a real pattern. Our brains are basically pattern recognition machines. So finding a second symbol is like getting another hit of dopamine. It tells our brain, hey, you're on the right track, keep going. This is the same reward loop that drives all kinds of discovery.
And bam! That creaking door, the moving shadow, that's a textbook amygdala hijack. It's when a sudden sound or sight bypasses the rational part of your brain and triggers an instant fight or flight response. It's pure survival instinct kicking in, even when they're in a perfectly safe building.
This whole chaotic chase scene is just the perfect visual for how quickly fear can spread in a group. One person gets spooked and suddenly everyone's running. It really shows you how our emotions can get amplified and spiral when we're with other people. So they're hiding in this huge, dark lecture hall, and you've got to imagine what's going on inside their bodies. Adrenaline is pumping, heart rates are up, their senses are cranked to the max. They're in a state of hyper-arousal. It's great for surviving a real threat, but it makes it pretty much impossible to think clearly and calmly. And then the light comes on.
This is the turning point. They're trapped, and they have to face whatever it is that's been chasing them. From a psychological standpoint, this is huge. You can't outrun fear forever. Eventually, you have to stop and confront the unknown to figure out what's really going on.
So instead of just staying scared, Aslet does something really smart. She speaks up. She asks a direct question. By doing that, she's taking back control. She's switching from being a passive victim of her fear to an active investigator, trying to get information. It's a way of kicking the rational part of her brain back into gear.
And the big reveal, the scary phantom is Mr. Iden, the department janitor. This is a perfect example of how our brains can build this entire scary story based on just a few little clues and get it so wrong. The shock of reality being so different from what they imagined is what makes the whole thing suddenly funny.
So it turns out this whole thing wasn't a prank or a secret society. It was basically a game. It's a scavenger hunt called the Professor's Puzzle. This is actually a brilliant teaching method called gamification, taking tough concepts and turning them into a fun, engaging puzzle. It makes learning feel voluntary, not like a chore.
And this is the brilliant part. The whole time they thought they were just goofing off and chasing shadows, they were actually studying. Instead of just reading about a concept, they were physically interacting with it, solving a problem related to it. That kind of hands-on, experiential learning creates way stronger memories than just rereading your notes.
And the prize at the end of this scavenger hunt? Well, it isn't what you'd expect. It's not a better grade or some academic award. It's a care package. And that's really important. It's rewarding them not for being the best student, but for being curious and for following through.
And just look at what's in there. It's not about grades, it's about taking care of yourself. The tea and Samit are for their physical exhaustion, and that little note, you know more than you think, that's for their morale. It shows a real understanding that being a student is about more than just your brain.
So here we are at the end of the night. The sun's coming up, and look at them. They started the night stressed out and isolated, but this weird, shared adventure, full of curiosity and a little fear, brought them together. And now they have a totally new perspective on the very thing that was stressing them out.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? This whole thing happened because of exam stress, but it's a powerful reminder that the most important lessons, they're usually not the ones you find in a textbook. Learning is about curiosity and working together, and just being willing to see where a weird puzzle takes you. It makes you wonder, what kind of puzzles are hiding right in front of you, just waiting to be solved?